Georgia. I am Raj Sashti, Executive Director of the Consortium at Reinhardt University, located in Metro Atlanta. We have already sent you an agenda flyer for today's program, Virtual Conference on Africa, the Climate Crisis, Engagement and Activism, which will now proceed as planned. You are special today, for without you, there is no program. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to join our conference. To the extent we would like to send you copies of PowerPoint presentations, multimedia resources, and audio and video links, please type the name of your school and your first and last name in the chat box. Next, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the U.S. Department of Education and National Resource Centers for Africa at the University of Florida, Boston University, Howard University for providing the resources to plan, develop, and implement this program. My thanks and appreciation also go to African Studies officials, Agnes Leslie, Elsa Vihi, Brenda Randolph, and Vanessa Oyugi. Needless to say that I am also thankful for the support of President Mark Roberts and faculty and staff and students of Reinhardt University for co-sponsoring this conference. As some of you are aware, the objective of our consortium is to provide domestic and overseas professional development opportunities for faculty members across disciplines so that they can increase the knowledge and understanding and awareness of students they teach as they pursue a career of their choice. Our ultimate goal is to provide global and area studies competency skills to young men and women so that they can adapt and succeed in a highly interdependent global economy. As a precaution and in an effort to help us stabilize the Zoom connection, we request you to turn off your video cameras and microphones during the presentation. Please do not interrupt the presenter. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for Q&A. During Q&A, each faculty member is requested to type his or her questions in the chat box or ask only one live question so that others will also have an opportunity. We will take as many questions as time permits. Time management is very strict because we want to make sure every presenter has the time promised to him or her, and so would be the lunch and refreshment breaks. Now to your feedback during and after the conference. We take evaluation and feedback very seriously because this is a federally funded program and therefore accountability is important for continued funding. On your related matter, we also want to serve you better the next time. Therefore, at the conclusion of each presentation, please record in 1 or 2 lines your positive, outstanding, excellent, very good, good, and other impressions in the chat box. We will soon send a link to you to provide us qualitative and quantitative feedback as we attempt to add value to your professional development experience. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to our consultants for today, Mr. Dawit Benti of Addis Ababa University, Ethiopia, Dr. James Boyce, Emeritus Professor at UMass Amherst, Ms. Vanessa Nakate, 2022 UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and Climate Activist, and Dr. Olufemi Taiwo at Georgetown University, Washington, D.C. At this point, I would like to invite Dr. Agnes Leslie from the University of Florida, Elsa Vihi from Boston University, and Brenda Vanessa Oyugi from Howard University to share some information with regard to each of their centers. Leslie, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Raj, and thank you everybody for joining us. This is really a pleasure for us to be here together and to share our resources and to be able to participate in this workshop today. I will just try to share my screen today just to give you a brief summary of some of the resources that we have at the Center for African Studies. Okay. Yes, there we go. So I'll just briefly go, over some of the things that we have at the Center for African Studies so that we can align ourselves with some of the things that we have, so that even after this workshop, you can get in touch with us. And this is just a brief summary. And the Center for African Studies, as some of you may know, is actually located in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University of Florida. Its mission is to promote excellence in teaching and research on Africa in all the disciplines at the University of Florida and beyond. The center also disseminates knowledge about Africa to the wider community, which is like today, through an integrated outreach program to schools, colleges, community groups, and businesses. And this is why we are doing this today in collaboration with these other universities. And the outreach program includes a variety of programs and activities which are intended to improve the teaching of Africa in schools, K through 12, university level, and also to the community. And just briefly, these are some of the outreach programs that we have. We offer in-service institutes for K through 12 teachers. Next week, we'll have a whole week-long institute on K through 12 teachers, and we also promote this toward using college faculty as well. We also have a virtual summer institutes that we have for K through 12. Like I say, the week-long institute that will help teachers develop lesson plans to be used in the classrooms. We also collaborate with other institutions like BU, as we are doing here, like Howard University, in order to promote the teaching of Africa to the wider community. And also, we have publications which may interest you in terms of teaching about Africa. We have Teach Africa, which is a publication to promote teaching about Africa. We have more than 20 issues available online, and there's free access to that. We also have Africa Studies Quarterly, which is also a free access peer-reviewed journal publication. You may be able to actually get information related to that. I'll give you the information in a minute. So the university has one of the top programs in the United States for studying African languages. We offer 7 African languages, for instance, right now in all levels, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And the Center for African Studies also offers study abroad opportunities. So for more information, there's so much, and I don't want to belay you with so much information. All I can say is that if you click africa.ufl.edu, you'll find all the resources that we actually have there. So I'll stop sharing that. This is just a brief introduction to my Center for African Studies at the University of Florida. Thank you so much. And I'll hand that over to either Brenda or Elsa.
I can start. I'm Brenda Randolph, and I'm one of the outreach directors at the Center for African Studies at Howard University. And with me is Vanessa Oyugi, our other co-director, who is going to share the screen so you can take a look at some of the resources that we have. So our website, cfas.howard.edu, and you come here to outreach. And first, I just wanted to talk about our upcoming workshop, which is going to be, let's see if we can, let's see if we click on, yeah, here it is. So we are having 3 eminent scholars who will be talking about how archaeology is changing what we know about medieval West Africa. They are going to be discussing these recent archaeological findings that demonstrate the global reach of West African gold, glass beads, and other trade items in medieval times. So please join us. That's Wednesday, August the 2nd at 10 a.m. from 10 to 1. So you can hear these wonderful presentations by these outstanding scholars. I also want to introduce you to our interactive websites. We have the Gold Road, which is an interactive map that highlights people, places, and items related to medieval Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. It takes a little getting into, but we have an introduction to show it how it works. It has different time periods for the Ghana Empire, Mali, and Songhai. You can click on any of those, and then you can look at things about landscapes, about places, important people. You can have it all on at once or one thing at a time. So please explore the Gold Road, and if you have any questions about it, we are always ready to help. Our second interactive site is Discover Africa in the World, which reveals evidence of Africa related topics in the US and other regions of the continent. So let's see if we can go to Discover Africa in the World. Again, an interactive site. And we're beginning to put lessons up so that makes it easier for people to explore the site. So these are some of the featured sites that we have. Did you know that there was a Timbuktu, New Jersey? So we'll be talking about that actually partially in our August workshop. So we also have, we hope that you will download our new magazine, Book 2, which is an Africana magazine for teachers and students. And it connects the K-12 education and above to cutting edge research by African studies scholars. And Book 2, by the way, is the name of the legendary founder of Timbuktu. She was a 12th century woman who set up a camel refreshment center that grew into Timbuktu, the great city of trade and scholarship. So the name Timbuktu actually means the place or the well of Book 2. You can download a copy of the magazine. And finally, if you can come back to me, if we can stop sharing the screen. Well, right behind me, you'll see this. This is Kaba. Howard University is our administrative center for the Children's Africana Book Awards. We give awards for the best children and young adult books on Africa each year. So please visit the website if you want to learn more about them. And two that I highly recommend from this year, both with the Ghanaian setter, is The Kaya Girl, and our very own from Washington, D.C. area, The Door of No Return by Kwame Alexander. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brenda. And I'm going to jump in. And in the interest of time, since it's already 9, I will try to make this as succinct as possible. My name is Elsa Ville, for those of you who do not know me, and I lead the education program at the African Studies Center at Boston University. I want to reiterate how happy and enthusiastic I am to see you here today, because this means your presence here today means that you are committed to bringing Africa to your classroom, and there is no project more important than that. Africa is everything. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Africa is a model for mitigating the climate crisis. Africa is the birthplace of mathematics. Africa, there's so much about the history and cultures of Africa that need a huge place in the classroom and that deserve respect and reverence. So like the University of Florida and Howard University, we are also a Title VI funded research and teaching center, and our main mission is to serve you, to increase the reach of African studies in your classroom. So that means that beyond serving our own students at Boston University, we are happy to help you. We have a public mission to do so, like the other institutions, and we're happy to coordinate with you. So what does that mean for you specifically? That means that if you are adding to a course, building a new course, wanting to involve Africa-related content, we are here to support you. We can consult with you, and we are happy to do so. And all of our services, for the most part, for all the Title VI institutions, are free. So don't hesitate to reach out. In that line, we have a course enhancement grant that we give out every fall to higher education instructors that I encourage you to apply for. I just dropped the link in the chat box. It is $2,000, and the main goal of the grant is for you to incorporate Africa-related content in your course. So the call for the fall hasn't come out yet, but it will, and I encourage you to apply and sign up for our newsletter, which you can do so right here to find out about the call and the deadline. We are also very, very happy to support you in coordinating guest speakers for your classrooms, supporting the inclusion of guest speakers, funding the inclusion of guest speakers. So if that is a way you want to bring Africa-related content, we are happy to serve you. We are also the host of the International Journal of African Historical Studies, and I'll put the link right here. So I encourage you to submit your publications to the journal. We house the journal in-house at the African Studies Center. I won't go into all the detail of our teaching resources, but I'm dropping another link of our teaching resources here. We have a host of teaching resources, including on climate change, on all disciplines and for all levels, from kindergarten all the way up to higher education. So do check out the link that I just dropped in the chat box right now and bookmark it. Finally, I just wanted to mention that Howard University, University of Florida, Boston University, and the other institutions, about 10 of us, I think we are about 13 of us right now, we are part of the African Studies Association Outreach Council, and together we do a lot of collaborative work. And we have a website where we promote our joint resources. So I'm just linking the website in the chat box right now. Feel free to check it out. It is also a great repository of all great institutions' work on bringing Africa into the classroom. So without further ado, I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm going to drop my email in the chat box right now. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our conference moderator, Raj, who will then set the framework to introduce the first speaker.
Very good. Elsa, thank you so much. And so thank you to Brenda and also to Leslie. Next, each presenter will be introduced in sequence by Agnes Leslie, myself, and Elsa Vihi and Vanessa Oyugi. Following the presentation, each of us will also moderate the Q&A session. Now it is time for me to request Agnes Leslie to introduce our first presenter for the morning. Agnes, please take it away.
Thank you again, Raj. I'm very pleased and excited this morning to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Dawit Benti Irana, to this workshop. And you will see why. He is really a trove of information, and this presentation is going to really blow you away because it's so inclusive. It has a lot in it, so be prepared for that. But let me introduce our speaker, who's coming all the way to us from Addis Ababa. Mr. Benti is the chair and faculty member of architecture and building sciences at the Ethiopian Institute of Architecture, Building Construction, and City Development in Addis Ababa. He is a professional architect with more than 2 decades of experience in architectural design, interior design, and project implementation with a focus on sustainable and localized solutions. His work includes single and multi-family residences and their interiors, as well as hotels and healthcare centers. Mr. Benti is also involved in the architectural design and supervision of a multi-channel, multi-story media complex building in Addis Ababa right now. He has taught architectural design in various universities for both undergraduate and graduate students. And he is now focusing on teaching contemporary architecture and theory of architecture. His research interests range from informal settlements to design issues in maternal healthcare facilities in Ethiopia. I'm so pleased that Mr. Benti can be here with us this morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Benti. Please take it away. And thank you for being with us. I'm so glad you're joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege for me to talk about this topic. And thank you for the organizers for giving me this opportunity. There is a little of an echo where I am now, so it's an empty room. So I hope you can bear with me. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'll be talking about sustainable cities and climate crisis. So I'll be focusing on Africa. So when we talk about sustainable cities and the climate crisis, let's first try to understand Africa. So we'll try to delve into what the continent represents. So we'll talk about continental and city facts in Africa. So we have Africa as this continent. So it's the root of humanity. And we have about 54 countries in Africa. And yes, so we have these 6 regions in Africa. We have the North, West, Central, East, and the South. So this is adopted by the African Union. So the north part is, of course, the above the Sahara Desert. So sub-Sahara is every part of Africa except the northern region in Africa. So we have divisions. So the countries with there are many countries in the eastern part of Africa. So this image shows the number of countries in each region of the African continent. So this is a very common term, like sub-Saharan Africa. So sub-Saharan Africa is Africa except those 6 nations delineated by the gray color. So 54 minus 6 would be like 48. So you know that yeah, majority of Africa is represented by the sub-Saharan Africa. So this is the climate. We have this desert on the north with the orange color. So it represents the Saharan desert. So they say the Saharan desert takes about 25% of the total area of the continent. So it's a large expanse of land that is least populated with humans and all kinds of life forms. So this shows the maps, African maps. Okay, thank you. So this is Africa, the rainfall map and the land cover map. So the rainfall shows us where the abundance of rain is. The darker blues represent heavy rainfall. So this is also reflected on the land cover. So on the right, you have the green area, the forest cover. So the yellow parts on the right represent the crops. So this is where life is thriving and where, you know, humans and animals live. Next is the map showing the economy. So you have low income levels shown by yellow colors, and the purple and the blue shows high income nations. So Europe and America, North America are represented by the blue. So globally, Africa is depicted as a continent with low income levels. So that positions Africa in the income brackets in the globe. So this shows the foreign direct investment and global cities. So the blue dots show the source city for foreign direct investment, and the green represents the source and the blue represents the destination. Again, Africa does not play well in this global financial transaction, you would see. So Europe, North America, Southeast Asia, and a little bit South America is really represented. So if we have anything in Africa, it's represented by the blue. It's a destination continent. So finance is coming to Africa and not going the other way. So this is FDI amongst African cities. So again, this map tells us where the important nodes in Africa are. It's you have Cairo at the top, and South Africa, and the Maghreb, and West Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. So these, I would say, are the nerves. When we talk about cities in Africa, it's always good to see these economic hubs in the African continent. Again, this map shows the strategic importance of the African cities. So you can see again, it's not a map, a geographical map, but it's a conceptual graphics that shows the importance of African cities within the global FDI system. So Johannesburg stands tall and big, followed by Cairo, Lagos, Nairobi, and Dar es Salaam and Lome. The rest are insignificant so far as the global FDI system is concerned. This shows the heat maps of FDI in African cities. So we have total FDI, headquarters of FDI, high-tech FDI, manufacturing, services, and resources. So again, these again reinforces the fact that we have very few highly important nodes in the African continent. Again, North Africa, Cairo, the Maghreb, Tunisia and Morocco and Algeria and South Africa. And in the West, we have Nigeria. So if we look at the heat maps, so FDI, whether it's headquarters of FDI or services, or on the left, manufacturing, it almost always falls into these 4 regions, I would say. So this map shows the wealth. Again, wealth is concentrated in a few cities or few parts of Africa. So this represents $1 billion, so or billionaires. So there are 150 billions in Cairo and 276 billion in Pretoria. So South Africa, you have Nigeria, Kenya, and Morocco, I would say. Again, these are billion-plus companies by a country. So we have 1 billion plus. So in Ethiopia, where I am from, we have four companies that have net worth of more than $1 billion. So this pack is led by South Africa. So South Africa has 147 companies with more than $1 billion net worth. So again, here we have Egypt, Morocco and Algeria and Nigeria. So this is an important map that shows us where money is in the African context. So large private sector firms have an important role to play in rekindling economic progress in Africa because they contribute disproportionately to growth, innovation, employment, exports, productivity, and taxes. So we have in Africa at least 345 companies that have revenues of 1 billion or more. And collectively, they produce revenues of more than 1 trillion. And in 2030, it would go high up to 550 billion. This is a study by McKinsey and Company. So this is a map that shows consumer markets. So we have Cairo is #1. So again, when we look at centers of economy, we might use different parameters, but again, this shows that those nodes that we've discussed earlier are still represented by different parameters. So this is a map that shows density. Again, when we look at density, those areas are still important. You see that Egypt is represented by a linear, densely populated geographical area. So it is, so what these areas on the left represent is areas populated with 1 million inhabitants. So one region within those lines represent 1 million people. So you see that it gets smaller in West Africa and East Africa, Ethiopia, and the lakes and around the Victoria Lake again in East Africa. Those regions get smaller because that means they are highly densely populated. So if you look at Libya, for example, it only has 3 regions. That means, so basically the Saharan Desert is the least populated of all the regions in Africa. Again, another map that shows a density. It shows people per kilometer. So the darkest ones represent 1,000 people per square kilometer. So Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Kenya, and around the Great Lakes, and the Maghreb, Algeria, and Morocco, and Tunisia, and Cairo, we have a population density. So when we talk of cities, we would do well to know that there are 38 coastal countries and 16 are landlocked. Ethiopia has the biggest, globally, the biggest population with a landlocked, from a landlocked nation. So 38 countries have coasts and 16 countries are landlocked. 12 countries have coasts, but their capitals are not coastal, like Kenya. Kenya's capital is Nairobi, but it has a very important, significant coastal city called Mombasa, which is a gateway for many of the inland countries like Kampala and Rwanda and Burundi. So the fact that their capitals are not coastal does not mean they don't have important coastal cities. And 26 of these African countries' capitals are coastal cities. So this is important because when we think of climate change and the global sea level rise, these are the cities that are going to bear the consequences. So largest cities in Africa, so largest not in size, but in population, Lagos is leading us. No city from Ethiopia is here, but it might be because of absence of recent formal census. Otherwise, we have, again, West Africa, North Africa, Egypt, and South Africa. So we have those important regions also represented in the number of their population. So when is Africa going to transit into majority urban population? We're still a rural continent. So North America started this trend. It became majority urban in 1930, followed by Europe and Latin America, and the world as a whole transitioned into majority urban population around 2008. And Asia became past that threshold in around before 2020. And for Africa, it's yet to come, and it will be right before 2040. So in the midst of this century, Africa will be urban. So the question is it prepared? Is the question. So urbanization in Africa. Africa is urbanizing fast, and an additional 950 million people is forecasted to live in African cities by 2050, and approximately 60% of the total population in the continent. So this is a very staggering figure. You would know that Africa is not prepared for this massive influx of rural population into the urban areas that are burdened with informality, poor infrastructure, and population pressure. So urbanization is an unstoppable trend. We cannot stem it, we cannot stop it. So in 2015, the image at the center shows us that Africa was rural. So is India and some parts of China. But in 1950, almost all of Asia and Africa and the majority of South America, including Mexico, were rural. But in 2015, only India and some parts of China or Southeast Asia and Africa still remain rural. So this is a trend that we will witness in the foreseeable future. So these are figures from Africa. Again, those parts which are economically strong have a higher degree of urbanization. Egypt is 43%, Nigeria is 50% urban. So it's a figure from 2018, 5 years ago. So I'm not exactly sure how it is as we speak. But so South Africa is 66% urban. So we have Libya, but there is some warning here. Almost all of the area of Libya is not habitable. It's part of the desert, the Saharan desert. So people naturally would live within the cities and the major important urban areas. Otherwise, we have these dichotomy again. The highly advanced places or economically important areas are highly urbanized. So we have central and eastern part of Africa rural. Ethiopia is 21% urban. So this shows, again, Africa is leading the globe with the rate of urbanization. So the vertical, it shows the percentage of urbanization. Still, Africa is leading. It has an average of above 4% urbanization, which is very high. While, for example, Central Europe and Baltic states have a very small 0% increase in the rate of urbanization because they are highly urbanized. They are in a way highly stabilized. But that's when you look at Africa, although the trend is decreasing, it's still very high, above 4%, I would say. So this is annual rate of population. So it's a national percentage. It's not for the cities. But you see that Africa still is adding more people on the globe. The blue color shows us that it is having more than 3% population increase. So the population change, look at this graph. It shows us that Africa is adding 796 million people globally, whereas we have negative numbers. If you look at Europe, it is losing 156 million people. So this figure is, I would say, both an opportunity and a challenge. So because on the West and on the global North, nations are losing workforces, I'd say. So let's look at this map. that shows population growth. So this represents 2025, and Southeastern Asia is very much represented with the nations with 100 most populous cities. So in 2100, look how everything migrates to Africa. So Africa would have the majority of the most populous cities in the globe. So this map shows us that Africa, Lagos, in 2100, Lagos will be the most populous city in the whole world. So you can see it started from around 15 million plus people. So if you follow the curve into 2010, it is like not the most populous, you know, although it is still one among the 20, it's not the most populous, but it would outsmart all those and it will be at the top. So Kinshasa would also be represented within this pack. Khartoum, Abidjan, and Mombasa would also be represented in one of the 100 most populous cities in the world. So is Africa prepared for this? So in 2010, the top 20 cities by population, Africa has 2 in 2010. Then in 2025, it will have 3. In 2075, it will, you know, take, it will rub shoulders with Southeast Asia. And in 2100, it will have almost 13 of the top 20 cities. So I'm bringing this up because, you know, climate change will have impact on highly densely populated informal cities with very weak urban infrastructure. So I'm bringing these for our discussion because of this one. So Lagos will lead the group. It will have 88.3 million, equivalent to the population of Germany, I would say. So then it will be followed with Kinshasa, 83.5 million, and Dar es Salaam. So the 3 most populous cities in the world will come from Africa. And Mumbai will follow, not very near. Again, Mumbai will follow as the 4th most populous city globally. So, of the 100 most populous cities in the world, 38 will be in Africa. So, in 2010, only 10 African cities ranked in the top 100. This speaks volumes for our discussion in climate change. So Lagos will lead the pack in 2100. And again, this will also coincide with a slowdown in the majority of today's most populous cities outside of Africa. And Tokyo will lose nearly 1/3 of its population because of declining birth rates. So can Africa make use of this opportunity? And Houston would also fall back. So what about current conditions? So we have these, I would say, clusters, 2.5 million urban inhabitants and more. So this is an image made, it's regional and international. So if you have 2.5 million urban inhabitants that are separated with less than 100 kilometers, then you have the image on the left. And if you have more than 10 million urban inhabitants on the right, you have very hot spots. Again, I would see these as an opportunity because this image really corresponds to the economic hubs or nodes of the African continents, South Africa, Kenya and Uganda, and Ghana and Nigeria and Togo, and Cairo and Alexandria, the cities in Egypt, and Algeria and Morocco. So these population hubs are also hubs of economy. So can we really think population more of an opportunity than a challenge? So these are African second cities are undersized. So we have this issue called primate cities. So the secondary cities have very small population compared to the primate cities. And that is not the case when, so there is a comparison of African countries and non-African countries. China, India, the US, and Brazil are placed at the bottom. So for example, if we take Algeria, so if we take Algiers, and if we think it has 100 people, then Oran, the second most populous, will have only 25 people. So 25% of the primate city. So this is also a problem. It shows that the capitals are highly congested. So people are still flocking to the capitals. And these African nations do not have secondary cities that could take off the burden from them. So in China, the figure is different, Shanghai, and you have Beijing. If Shanghai has 100, then Beijing has more than 75%. So India also represented with Delhi and Mumbai, the US represented with New York and LA. And this figure is, this is where we need to really say, oh, take care about this. We need to have more secondary cities that could absorb the pressure off from these primate cities. Now let's look, let's revise our geography. So Africa has about 6 geography. This is an image that I took, that I borrowed from David Adjaye, a very famous architect, British architect of Ghanaian origin. So he really worked a very nice book on African cities and their architecture. So we have 4 cities on the desert and 4 cities in the Maghreb. So this is the biggest of the desert is Cairo. It's a flower from the desert. So in Maghreb, Algiers, Tunis, Rabat, and Tripoli, they are, so these Maghreb really has these kind of Mediterranean climate. So almost all the population in the Maghreb nations are settling in these cities. Then comes the Savannah. We have 7 cities. And the Sahel has these 4 cities, Bamako, Jamena, Niamey, and Ouagadougou. So this Sahel is a belt between sub-Saharan Africa and the Sahara. So it's at the forefront of desertification. And there is a huge campaign to stop the desert from encroaching the southern, the sub-Saharan part. So it's at the forefront of the fight in desertification. Now we have mountain and Eiffel. Yesterday I had a question from Agnes, whether Harare and Lusaka are in the mountains. So I have another term added into these, mountain and high belt. So I made sure that Lusaka and Harare fall into these division. And the majority of the cities belong to the forest ecology of Africa. So we have 25 nations from the forest region, and Abuja, Lagos is, which is very important in within this region. So let's look at typology of cities. So we have geography based. So we can talk of the cities that we've just seen. It could be about location based, coastal versus continental. And it could also be time based. Are they historical? Does it have history? Was it being inhabited since ages, like the cities in Mali or the cities in Ethiopia or in Nigeria, like Kano? Or are they new cities, relatively speaking? And we can also talk of origin. Are they colonial or indigenous? then we can talk about dividing the cities based on planning decisions. So we have new planned cities. So the most important for us would be Abuja, designed in the 70s by huge global modern architects like Kenzo Tange from Japan. So these are cities that were really planned on the table. So we can make use of these divisions when we try to understand the impact of climate on them. So we have these historic, continental, and Sahel cities. It is Djenné from Mali. So it's like it's very sustainable medieval city, historical. So this is some image from how from Mali and how they go about doing their climate sensitive, resilient, sustainable ecological construction techniques. This is a colonial city. Again, it's also coastal. It's from the forest. So one city could really fall among those divisions that are used. And it's interesting if we really follow this matrix and see how cities fare into this matrix, complex matrix. So Maputo is a colonial, coastal, and forest city from southeastern part of Africa. And Addis Ababa is indigenous, it's not medieval, the city that I'm now from. So it's indigenous, it's recent, it's a continental city, and it's from the mountains. So I think Addis is one of the highest globally. So I think it might be third. Maybe we have Quito in Ecuador and La Paz in Bolivia, like the highest capitals from the world, and Asmara and Addis Ababa. These four are like the highest capitals in the world. So when the plane manufacturers try to fly their new planes, they come often to Addis Ababa to check their functionality. So the new capital, Cairo, it's a new city, it's a continental, a desert, and it's found in Egypt. So we have New Cairo represented on the left on the pink image. It's represented with this. I'm not sure if it would really look with the green and the river. So sustainability is at stake. And we're also not sure if they have followed up the questions of accountability and how would I say participatory approach and visibility. Was it like discussed on the table amongst various stakeholders? But as we see it, it's being built, and this tower that we see here in the slide is going to be the tallest in the whole world. So one would ask, is architecture and city planning pragmatic, or is it symbolic? So did the pharaohs build the pyramids out of functionality or just for symbolism? I think humanity still keeps building for the mere reason of adding to the symbolic value. We have smart city Konza Technopolis in Nairobi. So this is under construction. It has not yet been finished, but you see that these images, satellite images, show that work is underway. And Africans want to look like the other nations globally. So let's talk now about climate crisis and cities. So this is an image, a parched land. It's a very dry land. So what is climate change? Let's try to define it. It's a change. Read the bold ones in the middle of the paragraph. So it's a change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere, and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. So there is this the UNFCCC, UNFCCC. It's a UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So that is like the parent organization which coined the word, the Rio, the Kyoto, and the Paris Agreement. So this organization is behind all these, the Earth Summit in the 90s, the Kyoto in 97, and the Paris Agreement. It's under the umbrella of this organization. So it defines it as climate change is defined as happening related with directly or indirectly with human activity. So humans are at the center of these problems. So we have cities. So we have cities, and here we have this shows us climate risk, climate change risk, and the countries. So the continents. On the horizontal line, we see Africa, America, Asia, Europe, Central Asia, and the MENA, Middle East, and North Africa. So the blue is representing Africa, and you can see that it falls vertically under the extreme climate change risk bracket. So Lagos, Luanda, and all of them are, they are highly vulnerable to climate change risk, whereas when you look at the other countries like the America, Europe, and Central Asia, they are at a medium risk or a low risk. Look at London and Paris, they fall within the low climate risk bracket. So are Buenos Aires from the Americas. So we see that climate change would disproportionately impact Africa and African cities. So although Africa contributes only about 4% of global greenhouse emissions, it could pay the heaviest price for the global acceleration of climate change. And no less than 70% of African cities are highly vulnerable to climate shocks. Yet they are also the economic epicenters of the continent, and they are still growing. So Africa is taking the burden of someone else impacting the global climate. So it will be hardest hit by climate change. So there are 4 key reasons for this. It's important to know. The first is millions depend on rainfall. So whenever you have an anomaly in rainfall, Africa is about to be quickly impacted. The second is the African climate system is vastly understudied. So there are no observations, no research is being done. I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I would say the least amount of research is done on the African climate. So it's attributable to research institutes and basically funding. So it is almost always capable of all sorts of surprises. The third is the degree of expected climate change is large. So that is what was visible. So when you look at the rainfall data, the climate change in the northern and southern part of Africa is beyond that which was witnessed in any part of the globe or in any other continents. And the last one is there is a capacity problem for adaptation both at the individual and governance level. So this is the first reason. Many are dependent on agriculture. The second is the climate change risk. It's understudied. So we don't know how dust storms impact the cities. The third is there is the climate change risks. So these are like lack of change represented with the yellow. It's in French. And in the south, you see how it's impacted on the eastern and central part. You have a lot of rainfall. So when you have this climate change, you have either a very small amount or a very high amount of rainfall. So there was a study made for climate adaptation, and the blue ones have a strong urban content in their studies, and the dark, so the lighter ones did not consider their urban sections when they studied their climate change. Maybe they took a larger portion of their studies in agriculture or industry or something else. So when we talk of climate change risk, we have two things: there's the shock and there are slow onset stressors. So these are the shocks: extreme heat, extreme cold, heavy precipitation, coastal flooding and wildfires, and wind-related disasters. Then the onslaught, the slow ones are drought, air pollution, land degradation, and rising sea levels. So this map shows us cities at risk from climate change. So we have extreme risk on the cities in Africa. So you would be pressed to see the green ones within the African continent. In Europe, you have so many greens, you know. It poses a low risk for the cities in Western Europe, North America. Even in some parts of South America, you would see that there are cities like Buenos Aires that are prepared for climate change. But with the exception of few dots that have a tint of green in South Africa, almost all are red. That means it's very alarming, and cities are at risk from climate change. Again, another image that shows how Africa has a low score for the climate crisis. So it is index score for climate resilience of African countries. It's at the country national level. So what are the climate change risks for the African cities? So this map shows us water stress, sea level rise, floods, droughts. I mean, if you have so many coastal cities, we can think of sea level rise to be an immediate stressor for African cities. I would show one clip, a short movie in the end, that shows how inhabitants in Monrovia informal settlements are really fighting this phenomenon of the sea level rise. So you have drought, heat waves. So almost all the cities in Africa, with the exception of the Sahara, you know, at the center, which is least inhabited, we have issues from climate risks. Then these are also issues that are affecting the African cities indirectly. We have urbanization is also seen, you know, the highest rate of urbanization could be a result of climate change in the rural areas. When you have less rainfall, you have faster urbanization, so migration, and then you have food prices and, you know, these shocks coming because of lack of rainfall. So you see, this image tells us all. What about instability? It is also climate change is discussed as a source for crisis, instability. So you can see literature that the problem in the Sudan as we speak could also be traced to climate change. And almost all those areas that are suffering because of climate change have one or another form of societal instability that could be expressed in civil war. So climate change exacerbates resource competition, intercommunal grievances, state fragility, and other vulnerabilities. With every 0.5 degrees Celsius increase in local temperatures, the risk of conflict increases 10 to 20%. Globally, the period from 2011 to 2020 was the hottest decade ever recorded. The Sahel was particularly affected, with temperatures rising 1.5 times the international average during this period. 8 of the 10 countries most vulnerable to climate change are in Africa, and 6 of those 8 are facing armed conflict. So let's see these three things. Let's have them in our mind when we discuss climate change and African cities and Africa. So we can distill them into these three concepts. So everywhere you read about climate change in African cities, we have rapid population growth that is above 4%. That is very high. When you look at European cities that are having a negative urban population growth. The second one is informal cities. So 76% of workforce in African cities are informal, and 56% of the houses themselves are informal. I would not like to use the word slum here because it has a very bad connotations in Ethiopia. For example, in our continent, they're not crime-ridden, they are very peaceful because of, there is no dichotomy, you know, like there is no colonial history in Ethiopia. So the informal settlements, that's how we prefer to use them, not slums, because the slums have this connotation of criminality and social problems. So the informal settlements in Addis Ababa, for example, have very poor physical quality. Otherwise, socially, it's very strong. It has social dynamics. There is also a possibility of upward mobility. So I would want to use informal instead of slum. And the third one is poor infrastructure. So when we try to mitigate, or when we try to adapt to the climate change, or when we try to mitigate the impacts of climate change, we need to think of these three things in our minds. It could either be population growth, informality, or poor infrastructure. So these are some truths that I have found from the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. It was a publication in 2015. Nonetheless, it's very important. So we're going to have hundreds of millions of people flocking into our urban areas. So we have the second fastest urban growth, and we have a young population as well. 3/4 of African urban population is younger than 35. So almost half of African population lives in the informal settlements. So these are some truths that you can go through. When we think of urban pollution, data which is important could be there are more than 200,000 commercial motorcycles in Lagos. Imagine how much that figure would be for all other motorized means like buses and taxis and cars. So, and 1/3 of urban dwellers in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to electricity. So their energy could be, biomass energy, trees, or, other forms. So that itself has an impact on the climate. So these are also data that we can, for the sake of time, I'll go through it very fast. So when we think of sustainability, we can think of climate adaptation, decarbonization, and transport planning. So what are sustainable cities? Sustainable cities are resilient cities that are able to adapt to mitigate and promote economic, social, environmental change. So this is the World Bank definition. So these are sustainable cities that are resilient, that are able to adapt to change, that are able to mitigate change and promote economic, social, and environmental growth. So when we think of sustainability, let's frame our discussion into the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. So there are 17 goals. So which goals are related with sustainable cities and climate crisis in Africa? So almost all will touch upon these these goals, but the 11th goal, sustainable cities and communities. So there are tools. This is a very powerful material developed by the United Nations, and we can make use of the tools that are within this. There is a lot of literature and tools, and we can use this goal, like the 11th goal, to come up with ways of making our cities sustainable. And there are sectors, maybe these are like the sectors where we can think of greening, making our cities sustainable. So adaptation and resilience, energy efficiency, land use and nature-based solutions, low carbon technology, renewable energy, transportation, urban public and green space, water, sanitation, and waste. So these could be taken from the tools from the 17 goals adopted by the UN that could be achieved, goals achieved in 2030. So I try to look at the global and local institutions, I would say organizations. Navigating them is a really complex task, I would have to admit. So it took me a while to find what are the resources that we have to think about sustainability in the African context. So we start from the World Bank. So on the left, we have the UN global institutes, and at the center, we have NGOs, global NGOs. And on the right, we have, I would say, African initiatives. So we have, the biggest organization that is working globally is the GEF, Global Environmental Facility. So it really supplies financial resources. So it is a big organization that really funds various diverse initiatives for cities and climate change. And at the top, you have the World Bank, you have the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change, and then you have the United Nations Environmental Program, and you have the Global Platform for Sustainable Cities. This is a place where you have the tools. So there is a wealth of information for all of us. If we really follow these, we can search their websites, and it's like, it's like swimming in a sea of information. Then you have the UN Habitat, you have the ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, World Resources Institute, Global Government of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So these are NGOs. You have the Cities and Climate in Africa, CICLIA. It's an NGO supported by the French government. You have the C40 cities, you have the Cities Alliance and Cities Without Slums. So it has the Future Cities Africa Initiative, Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, another one. So you have African Center for Cities. It is a center run by a university in Africa and the Netherlands. So University of Cape Town, to be specific. There's another NGO, Climate Change and Africa Opportunities. We have Africa Development Bank Group and Resilient Cities Network. So these are a number of, so here we have more than 16 kind of international organizations where there is a huge overlap on their focus to enable cities resist the climate change. So these are resources, I would say. You can go to their websites and get a number of free tools and studies that are available for free. So these are the three keywords. We have resilience. We cannot stop climate change. We cannot stop urbanization. We have informal settlements. So we're living in this context, and we have to be resilient. We have to adopt, and we have to mitigate. So these are three keywords. So these are methods where we can follow climate adaptation. So is it accommodation? Is it protection? Is it securing our incomes? Is it promoting awareness? So these are the goals on the first box. On the second, we have response categories. So is it socially related? Is it technical? Is it technological? Like green building codes. Should we build green? Or is it economically related? Is it empowering the marginalized community? Or is it local problem solving? Then we can find the adaptation action types. We have, the list is very rich. Then there is an outcome. Maybe the outcome could be capacity building or green infrastructure or policy. So this is the way where we can adopt. I think this is the way where African NGOs or activists or policymakers can follow most to adopt to climate change. And this is a study made where 10 cities with great number of actions recorded from literature, the climate drivers for these. So these are like cities that discuss number of actions. So if you have Nairobi, it has about 107 adaptations from 6 studies. So these are like cities that discuss climate adaptation. So it's based on literature. So we would realize because of this that African nations might not, the leaders might not be very much cognizant of the fact that they might not be aware of what is happening with climate change. And this shows a gap in addressing climate change and urban issues and adaptations. So these are some of the climate adaptations. Again, it's not mitigation. Example from Addis Ababa. Addis is championing the planting of trees. So we have planted billions of seedlings in the past 4 and 5 years. So in Nairobi, they are using, increasing their own public green spaces to improve access to healthier spaces. It's communal gardens. In Durban, it's about greening their roofs. In Egypt, it's about taking the pollution outside of the rivers. And it's in Mombasa, it's restoring mangroves in the peri-urban and suburban areas. So there are a number of, you cannot basically zero in on an experience. You know, there is a lot of initiatives in many African cities. So these are the samples. So this is Durban, South Africa is implementing green roofs in the city and focusing on watershed restoration outside the city. This will improve water quality, save on water treatment costs, and reduce waterborne diseases. So these are examples from Kenya, Egypt, and this is mitigation. So the Nairobi is pedestrianizing a section of its urban area. That means a decarbonization, I would say. It's mitigation at the source. So an example from Dar es Salaam, which is projected to have 13.4 million people in 2030. So it is highly urbanizing. So they are adopting the sustainable transportation system. So it's a BRT. So it's a leader in this appropriate technology. And again, it's an example from Makoko, Lagos. So this is a floating and very much vulnerable to climate change, floating settlement in Lagos. And there is a school by very Kunle Adeyemi, an important architect from Nigeria, practicing elsewhere, but he devised this one. So it fell, but they have redesigned it to sustain a stronger amount of magnitude of wind. Finally, I would like to show you a clip that really would summarize. So I would want to play this clip. How would I do it? Yeah.
You can see how the water destroy the whole place. Even the planes that are higher, the water destroy everything. And you can see in front of us how it is damaging the place.
Dawit,
The
is this
problem
an audio clip?
Yeah, a video.
Oh, we're not able to see
We
the
are not
video.
able to see the video.
I think you should change the share of the screen to the video window. Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Now we see it.
how the water destroy the whole place. Even the planes that are higher, the water destroy everything. And you can see in front of us how it is damaging the place. So that's the problem I have here.
And there's no sound.
Shoes factory is sloping. The whole area is flooded. So one of the challenges that shoes factory face, they have to do with drainage system network. Now the atmospheric condition will be intensified. So therefore you find more rainfall.
Children get sick during those time of flooding. He said there is a lot of malaria, found out there's a lot of cholera and so that's happening during this time. So climate change has great effect on our people, especially the women and children. But we know that this project has a lot of benefits for the people of Monrovia.
Because if they do have a good road, they have a good drainage system network, they get a good running water or a good pump water, then all these things will be minimized. The diseases will stop.
Thank you very much.